My name is Gary Nychek. I'm an ecologist for Johnson Engineering here in Fort Myers, and I'm going to be your tour guide through the 2016 annual training seminar for the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. Before we jump into the rules and the regulation of the Clean Water Act, I'd like to look at a few reasons why it was enacted in the first place. In the years before passing the Clean Water Act, several environmental mishaps occurred which spurred the creation of nationwide water quality laws. First up, we had kids playing on the beach. Typically, you don't find kids playing on the beach that big of a deal, but in this case, they were running through the fog of DDT sprayers. And in 1968, the U.S. Bureau of Sport Fisheries measured DDT in 584 out of 590 water samples that they took. In 1969, a river caught fire up in Ohio, the Cuyahoga River, and nobody ever likes when the river catches fire. This floating oil slick burned pretty hot and was one of the big instances to push the Clean Water Act moving forward. Also in 1969, there were a record number of fish kills measured, including over 26 million killed in Lake Thonotosassa, Florida. And then finally, the Department of Health, Education and Welfare reported that 30% of our drinking water supplies in 1970 had chemicals that were exceeding the recommended limits. So those mishaps set the parameters of what the U.S. did not want for its waters. And in response, Congress passed the Clean Water Act of 1972. Section 402 of the Clean Water Act authorized the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, to regulate point source discharges of pollutants. The NPDES performs its duties by requiring permits for industries to discharge stormwater into the waters of the U.S. It's important here to draw attention to the term waters of the U.S. This is a very broad term that includes streams, lakes, rivers, sometimes ditches, sometimes even stormwater management systems inside a facility. Very broad term, and that's kind of an important factor that will play in as we move forward. And then in October of 2000, the EPA authorized the FDEP to implement and enforce the provisions of the NPDES program. So now it is a state enforced program instead of a federal enforced program. There are two types of NPDES permit issued. Individual permits are typically used when a facility is not eligible for coverage under the generic permit. These facilities must develop specific requirements that apply just to their facility, so it's kind of a one-off plan that they have to abide by. On the other hand, the generic permit is issued for facilities that are able to comply with set established practices. Most industrial activities requiring an NPDES permit likely qualify for a generic permit. FDEP issues generic permits under the authority of Section 403.0885 of the Florida statutes. And again, FDEP adopted the 1995 EPA Multi-Sector Generic Permit, or MSGP, and EPA authorized FDEP to administer and regulate the NPDES program. All right, so we figured out what generic permit meant, but what does multi-sector mean? These are the sectors of industrial activity covered under the MSGP, and as you can see there under Sector S, air transportation, that includes facilities like this as well as Page Field. And within Sector S, there are several industrial activities that could potentially lead to the discharge of pollutants into the waters of the U.S. They include fueling, maintenance, painting, stripping, and washing of aircraft, equipment, and vehicles, handling and storage of cargo, chemicals, equipment, and fuel, aircraft lab services, waste and scrap metal or out-of-service equipment storage, pavement washdown, pesticide, herbicide use, vehicle parking, and of course the most important one down here is de-icing of aircraft and runways. Well, we found out that we could apply for the generic permit under Sector S, but there are some steps that had to be taken before we obtained that permit. LCPA has applied for and received coverage for a stormwater permit allowing discharges of water from the area of operation into the stormwater management system. A stormwater pollution prevention plan was written for RSW and for FMY. A notice of intent to receive coverage was submitted to FDEP, and if for some reason one of the airports no longer needs coverage, they will have to file for a notice of termination with FDEP. So you guys probably picked up on this stuff pretty quick, but it took me a while to kind of muddle through all of the acts and systems and permits and plans, etc. So here's a quick recap on the regulatory structure. The Clean Water Act is the legislation that authorized the creation of the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. The NPDES is the system used to set pollution discharge elimination goals and is implemented by the FDEP. The MSGP is a state-level permit issued by FDEP that regulates and authorizes our stormwater discharge. And finally, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan is the LCPA-developed plan to comply with the conditions of the MSGP for this site specifically. The SWIP is the comprehensive development and implementation document for measures and controls necessary to avoid and minimize the potential for contaminating water bodies. Generally speaking, LCPA assume the role of principal permittee. Tenants that perform industrial activities in common spaces are enjoined as co-permittees unless the LCPA determine that the tenant needs to obtain separate coverage and maintain their own SWIP. LCPA has developed and implemented its own SWIP for several years now and continues to update and implement the plan. The SWIP is composed of 4 sections. The introduction includes the SWIP organization, the program approach, the pollution prevention team. The facility description includes the land use descriptions, physiography and climate in the stormwater drainage system. Stormwater pollution source ID includes non-stormwater discharges, potential areas of pollutant contact, inventory of materials, historic spills and leaks and sampling data. And the stormwater management controls includes existing controls that we use now, recommended BMPs, and the BMP implementation plan. The pollution prevention team is composed of program manager along with LCPA staff, tenant staff, and consultant members. The PPT is responsible for maintaining and implementing the SWIP, disseminating SWIP information within the organization, training appropriate personnel, and ensuring that records are kept and reporting and notification procedures are followed. The LCPA pollution prevention team for Southwest Florida International Airport is set up here. Alicia Dixon is our program manager. Other departments that are represented include Airport Police Department, ARF, Maintenance and Operations. In addition to LCPA staff, there are several tenant members. Entities represented include 7-Eleven, commercial airlines, rental car facilities, private airlines, food suppliers, fuel companies, freight companies, maintenance companies, and consultants. And if you know of any updates to these lists, please let us know. It's important for us to keep these lists of contacts up to date. Let Alicia know and she can update those lists inside the SWIP. Moving into the facility description section of the SWIP, this map shows the approximate location of drainage subbasins for the airport. Generally speaking, water here flows from the northeast down to the southwest. There are several drainage basins here, starting with drainage basin A here that includes ARF, drainage basin B up here to the north. Drainage basin C over here includes the old facility, the old parking lot facilities, and the rental car maintenance facilities. D includes most of the runway here. Drainage basin E is down here, the southern part of the runway. Right now we're in drainage basin F. G and H are here on the western side of the property. This is drainage basin I with the terminal, and J includes the outfall over here. More specifically, you can see in this diagram the probable flow direction so that if a spill does occur and does move into the stormwater management system, you can intercept the spill at the next downstream location. Eventually, stormwater reaches outfall SW1, where the airport discharges into the Briarcliff Canal. Section 3 of the SWIP provides the stormwater pollution source identification. Digging into the details of the SWIP, you'll find that there are 2 types of regulated discharges of water. Stormwater is the flow of water which results from and which occurs immediately following a rainfall event. And non-storm water is typically created and discharged by people conducting activities such as washing, spilling, or dumping water and its associated chemicals. There are some non-stormwater discharges that are allowed, but you can see it's a very specific list. Discharges from firefighting activities are included, along with fire hydrant flushing, uncontaminated compressor condensate and air conditioning condensate, irrigation drainage, lawn watering, routine external building washdown, as long as no detergents are used, pavement wash water, where no contaminants are present, uncontaminated springs or groundwater, and uncontaminated foundation or footing drains, along with any potable water source. And here's a list of the prohibited non-stormwater discharges, and you can see that washing is a common theme here. It includes vehicle and building wash water if you use detergents, aircraft and runway wash water, and then wash water used to remove spills or leaks from impervious surfaces. So everybody here loves clean equipment, right? I know that you do. I've seen it. You drive around here and everybody's truck looks great. So what do you think about these guys cleaning their equipment? Is this an allowable discharge of stormwater? Just throw it out. Anybody? No? Probably not? They're probably not, unless they're catching all of that water and treating it appropriately. And the reason is there's grease, there's oils on this piece of equipment that are going to get sprayed off and washed into the system. I know it's tempting to wash your vehicles to keep them clean, but you need to remember that the airport is regulated differently than we are at home. The effect of so many vehicles being washed in proximity to sensitive areas means that you should use a commercial car wash service. So please be responsible, like these two guys here, and make sure that you use commercial car wash services when you clean your Port Authority vehicles. Continuing on with pollution source identification, we have stormwater discharges. A stormwater discharge of pollutants occurs when an industrial activity leads to a pollutant being spilled onto the ground, and then the rain washes that pollutant into the stormwater management system. The potential sources of pollutants that could be discharged into the stormwater system are organized by activity type, and they include aircraft de-icing or anti-icing, aircraft fueling, lab services, aircraft maintenance, painting and stripping, and aircraft washing, cargo handling, chemical storage and handling, equipment storage, equipment or vehicle fueling, maintenance, painting and stripping, equipment and vehicle washing, fuel storage, outdoor pavement washdown, outdoor waste receptacles, pesticide and herbicide use, runway and taxiway de-icing, scrap metal and out-of-service equipment storage, and vehicle parking. All right, here's a map of RSW showing the areas of the airport where spills are likely to occur, along with the activities that might cause those spills. And I'm sure that your eagle eyes are picking up every single detail on there, right? No need to go into it further. All right. We can zoom in a little bit to each area and see the activities that are performed that could potentially lead to the discharge of pollutants. This is the vehicle and grounds maintenance area, and activities here include equipment fueling, equipment maintenance, washing, chemical storage, fuel storage, equipment storage, and scrap metal usage. This is the terminal and parking areas. Activities here include aircraft fueling, equipment storage and fueling, fuel storage, and vehicle parking. This is private sky and air freight areas. Activities here include aircraft fueling and lab services, equipment maintenance, washing and storage, equipment storage, chemical storage, fuel storage, cargo handling, and scrap metal storage. This is the area of ARF, and it includes equipment fueling and maintenance and fuel storage. The GSE area includes equipment fueling, maintenance, storage, equipment painting, chemical and fuel storage, vehicle parking, and aircraft lab services. And the reason I kind of showed those to you so specifically is so that you guys understand that any changes to the activities in those areas need to be included in the SWIP. It's not that big of a deal if an activity comes up or gets removed from those areas, but the SWIP does need to be updated. So any of those changes need to be forwarded to Alicia so that she can put a note in the SWIP so that we can keep that document up to date. All right, so how much pollutant are we talking? And this is, you're going to have to interact with me on this one, so help me out a little bit. Let's start with Jet A. How many gallons of Jet A can be stored on RSW? Anybody throw out a number? Right at, keep up with me, 1.7 million gallons of Jet A. Gasoline is our next big guy. Anybody have a guess of gasoline on site? 10,000? 200,000, I like that one. 178,000 gallons of gasoline stored on site. Diesel fuel is up next. 300,000? About 42. Oil at about 4,500 gallons. And then other pollutants that we store here on site, just under 24,000 gallons. All right, so for some perspective, that gives us a total of just shy of 2 million gallons of pollutants that we store on site every day, or we have the capacity for on site. All right, just for a little comparison, a little perspective, a 50 meter by 25 meter by 2 meter deep Olympic-sized swimming pool holds about 660,000 gallons of chlorinated water, meaning that the airport has the capacity for right at 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools of pollutants stored on this site every day. All right, so how do we stop 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of pollutants from entering our waterways? Well, we develop, implement, monitor, and report on appropriate controls. The BMPs in the SWIP can be classified as either source controls or structural controls. A source control is a procedural or a work practice. This is an active control, and it requires a trained human to take action for it to work. They require on-site decisions and trainings, and they're only available when someone's present. A structural control is typically an engineering or design feature. These are passive, and they occur whether someone is there to help the situation or not. They do require regular monitoring, maintenance, and systems checks, but these services are always on. Most of you probably play a role in both types of controls, whether it's inspections of alarms, sight glasses or sensors, or cleaning up after a quart of oil has spilled on the ground. Controls are also known as best management practices. A best management practice is a device, a method, practice for removing, reducing, retarding, or preventing pollutants from reaching the receiving waters. And we find these best management practices stashed away in Appendix E of the SWIP. These BMPs, again, are organized by activity type. These are the areas and activities where BMPs have been developed. I'm not going to read through them now because I'm going to read through them very slowly and monotonously in the next few minutes. Please don't hurt your forehead on the desk in front of you. All right, we're going to start off with SC1, elimination of non-stormwater discharges to storm drains. Non-stormwater discharges can be classified as activity-based or overt. An activity-based non-stormwater discharge is typically associated with wash water and spillage. It can include vehicle, equipment, and aircraft wash water, spilled fuel or chemicals, or building, concrete, or asphalt wash water. An overt non-stormwater discharge is typically an illicit pipe connection that may include processed wastewater, treated cooling water, or sanitary wastewater. Structures that can be piped illicitly include oil water separators, interior floor drains, utility sinks, and chiller and boiler overflow blowdown lines. This photograph shows a possibility or something you could look for that could be a potential illicit connection. This is actually in the chiller building here at RSW, but in fact this connection goes right to the sanitary sewer as a permitted connection. So we weren't able to ding you guys for that one. Maybe next time. Operational considerations for the elimination of non-stormwater discharges include use dry cleaning and surface prep techniques where you can, limiting the availability of outdoor water supplies, posting signs at outdoor water sources, discouraging uses that could introduce pollutants, inspecting waste containers frequently, developing employee training programs that emphasize proper disposal procedures, developing and implementing SPCC plan where required, which we're going to talk about a little bit later today, and maintaining adequate supplies of spill response materials. SC2 is aircraft, vehicle, and equipment repair. Key approaches here include providing covered maintenance areas and including appropriate structural controls, utilizing drip pans, and maintaining adequate supplies of spill response materials. Additional operational considerations include properly disposing of the liquids and cleanup materials that you use, cleaning equipment regularly and eliminating the buildup of grease so that that doesn't fall off in an uncontrolled area, moving maintenance activities indoors or under covers where you can, and using designated wash areas. SC3, aircraft, vehicle, and equipment fueling. Key approaches here, installing berms or curbing around the area to keep the fuel where it's supposed to be, installing proper equipment for fuel dispensing and tank monitoring to prevent spills or overflows, and maintaining adequate spill cleanup materials at all sites. Additional considerations include discouraging the topping off of tanks, using absorbent materials to clean up small spills, properly dispose of liquids and cleanup materials, inspect, clean, and maintain the sumps and oil water separators, routinely inspect drainage valves and monitoring equipment, and regularly inspect fuel areas and storage tanks. SC4, aircraft, vehicle, and equipment washing. Key approaches here include using the designated areas, use dry wash techniques, recycle the wash water appropriately, covering catch basins, and providing employee training. Additional operational considerations include providing secondary containment for wash additives, using biodegradable phosphate-free detergents, collecting and discharging wash water appropriately, inspecting, cleaning, and maintaining your sumps and oil water separators, and maintaining adequate supplies of spill response materials. SC5 is a difficult one here in Southwest Florida. It deals with aircraft de-icing. This is a big deal in other parts of the country where de-icing chemicals make up a huge volume of chemicals used on site. And containing those chemicals can become quite difficult. But luckily here in Southwest Florida, you typically are able to de-ice planes using one of two methods. Hot water de-icing, which these folks try to use on their oranges. And if you're like our European friends, sometimes you let the sun assist in de-icing efforts. I don't know, maybe we can call this solar-assisted de-icing. Just remember to stay hydrated. Nothing. Nothing. All right. All right, moving on to SC6, material handling. Key approaches here include conducting loading, unloading activities undercover, transferring materials in paved areas away from storm drain inlets, and containing and absorbing leaks and spills as they occur. One of the big items here to pay attention to is where the storm drains are located compared to where you're conducting these material handling operations. A spill that happens on asphalt or concrete, 50 gallons, even 100 gallons, is a lot easier to deal with and clean up than the same spill that is spilled right next to a storm drain or a pervious surface. So please make sure that these material handling activities are performed away from those storm drains. Additional operational considerations include using drip pans where you can, maintaining spill supplies, and including spill kits on the material handling equipment themselves. SC7, material storage. Key approaches include storing materials indoors or undercover, storing drums on pallets and providing secondary containment, and performing and documenting periodic inspections. Additional operational considerations include avoiding dispensing from horizontal drums. During our inspection, we didn't see any horizontal drums used here on site, and hopefully you guys keep it that way. using drum lids to prevent rainfall from washing materials into the storm system, storing materials in their original or approved containers, properly labeled containers, reduce the quantities of materials stored on site or outside, providing appropriate training materials, maintaining spill supplies, and posting appropriate signage at all chemical storage areas. About halfway through, guys. Stay with me. All right, SC8 is waste handling and storage. Key approaches here include cover the waste storage areas, recycle as much as you can, regularly inspect and clean the waste storage areas, berm the areas to prevent contact with stormwater run on or run off, perform dumpster cleaning activities in designated areas, and properly dispose of all fluids. Additional considerations include regular housekeeping activities. Make sure you use covered dumpsters and keep those lids closed. That's a big one. Only use dumpsters with plugged drain holes. Separate, segregate your wastes, and perform and document periodic inspections of hazardous and non-hazardous waste storage areas. And while you're doing that, check for external corrosion, structural failure, spills, overfills, failures of any piping system, or signs of leakage in the dumpster area. SC9 is building and grounds maintenance. And key approaches here include keeping the paved surfaces clean and swept, clean the catch basins regularly, and manage the use of herbicides and pesticides. Operational considerations also include collecting outdoor wash water and disposing of it properly, utilize integrated pest management systems where you can, properly dispose of landscape waste, sweepings, and sediments, and maintain adequate supplies of spill response materials. SC10 is stormwater pollution prevention education. Key approaches here, perform inspections and enforcement regularly, provide training for employees, which luckily we are doing right now, promote education to the vendors and the public. SC11 is laboratory service operations. Key approaches, do not discharge lavatory waste into the sanitary sewer connection other than at the triturator. Utilize buckets or pans to capture drips. Don't perform lab truck clean out or flushings at any location besides the triturator, and carry absorbent and other cleanup and containment supplies on the lab service equipment. Additional operational considerations include drain the connecting hoses as completely as possible into the storage tank, properly secure all the hoses, valves, and equipment when you're moving them, use only surfactants and disinfectants approved for discharge into the sanitary sewer system, maintain your adequate supply of spill materials, and perform regular inspections of hoses and fittings to make sure we don't spill that stuff on the ground. SC12, equipment degreasing. Key approaches include using biodegradable phosphate-free degreasers, using a designated degreasing area and keeping the area clean and free of waste, and including proper signage to prohibit the discharge of waste oils. SC13 is firefighting foam discharge. Key approaches here is perform the testing in designated areas, properly dispose of waste foam, and service your sumps regularly. If you don't service them regularly, something crazy might happen like this. This is never good. Have Black Hawk helicopters submerged in aircraft fighting foam. And then finally, someone please tell me why this Southwest Florida International truck has icicles hanging from it. Nobody? All right, SC14, aircraft sump fuel management. Key approaches here include strategically deploying mobile collection tanks, deploying signage instructing maintenance personnel and pilots to dispose of wing test fluids appropriately, deploying spill kits, and using absorbent materials or vacuum equipment to clean up spills quickly. That brings us into SR1, which is emergency cleanup plans. Appendix D of the SWIP provides the RSW spill response and reporting procedures. Key approaches include developing and implementing a spill prevention, control, and countermeasures plan, which we're going to have to go over a little bit later. Maintaining plans for all regulated storage tanks, from the 420,000 gallon Jet A tanks that we have here on site, down to 2,000 gallon diesel tanks, 500 gallon oil tanks, all the way down to 55 gallon drums. Also provide training for employees and follow, hold on one second, and follow spill response procedures found in Appendix D of the SWIP. The best way to comply with SR1 is to remember the 3 R's. First, recognize that there is a spill. This may seem easy when it's something big, but remember that 1 drop of oil released into the waters of the U.S. is considered a discharge. So you have to recognize the little leaks too. Second is respond to the spill. This includes getting the leak or spill stopped before you initiate cleanup activities. And finally, we have report the spill. Report the spill to your supervisor and try to take note of what chemical is spilled, how much, and what you did to clean the spill. Digging a little deeper into these guys, on recognizing the spill, there are a lot of different types of spills out there. Sometimes it's easy to see a spill but not recognize it. And here are some examples. This is a hydraulic system that's got a little leak in it. These things occur all the time, but it's best to get these things taken care of quickly so that they don't become a bigger problem and that they don't impact the stormwater management system. This is an unknown spill next to a fueling island. A good idea that it's probably gasoline, but don't necessarily walk by it. If you see something like this, you need to recognize that this is a spill and do the investigation. A lot of times equipment will have little leaks, little drips. This is out on the tarmac next to a luggage cart. And a lot of times pieces of equipment have little leaks. None of us run 100% all of the time. So when you do see these leaks, take note of them and actually do something about it so that they don't become worse. If you can do it safely, evaluate the spill volume. Make sure it's not still spilling. How much more might be spilled? And can it reach a storm drain or an unpaved area? Next up, responding to the spill. You may need additional PPE to respond to the spill. Your first priority needs to be to stop the spill before you begin cleaning. It's counterproductive to clean up your spills before you're finished making them. It's kind of like waxing your car right before your buddy tries to pound out a dent. Stopping the spill can range from fixing small hydraulic leaks at vehicle maintenance, righting an overturned drum, or closing an appropriate valve, or hitting the emergency shutoff button. Once the spill is stopped, evaluate the spill to see what direction it is traveling. Your next priority needs to be to stop the spill from reaching a storm drain, ditches, or unpaved areas. Drain covers and booms can be used to protect these sensitive areas or to direct the flow of the chemical into a more manageable direction. When you're sure the leak is stopped and it cannot reach an environmentally sensitive area, use your spill response materials to absorb the spill and clean up the spill. Dispose of all used spill materials appropriately. And remember that the sooner you stop the spill and clean it up, the easier and cheaper the cleanup activities will be. I know a lot of guys, when an inspector comes around, they hate being photographed. When I was out doing the annual inspection this year, this forklift here in the back blew a hydraulic hose, and as me being the inspector rolled up, everybody scattered like flies. It was horrible. But eventually guys got in there and started taking care of it. And I appreciate that these guys did everything right very quickly, got the spill stopped, got it cleaned up, and disposed of the equipment very quickly, even with the inspector sitting there taking photographs. So I appreciate you you're doing your job there. If you need assistance with the cleanup, contact Aircom Central. They'll forward that request to airport line departments. But Aircom Central does need some information. At a minimum, they're going to need the location of the spill, the substance spilled, the approximate quantity spilled, and the status of the spill. Is it continuous or not? Is it stopped? That information gained at the spill site is incorporated into our spill log, and it's incorporated into the SWIP by the Environmental Compliance Manager. Remember that the RSW spill log includes spills ranging from a quart of material spilled up to hundreds of gallons. There is no harm in logging a spill when it's been properly cleaned up. The Environmental Compliance Manager will make the decision when to report those spills to state or federal agencies. The last BMP. TC1 is oil water separators. Key approaches include frequently inspecting and cleaning the separators and replacing absorbent pads as needed. Additional operational considerations include shutting the effluent shutoff valve during any cleaning operations. Any standing water that is removed during the cleaning must be disposed of properly and be replaced with clean water to prevent oil carryover. Performing and documenting all of your regular inspections and maintenance operations, and developing a written operating, sampling, and reporting procedure under local stormwater authority guidelines. All right, that moves us into monitoring and inspections. As we indicated earlier, many of the control measures used to keep pollutants from entering the waters of the U.S. are passive in nature and work even if there is no one present. However, it is critical that these structural source controls are inspected and maintained on a regular basis to ensure that they're working properly. Check potential pollutant areas to ensure that control measures are working. These two tanks are sitting on an appropriate size secondary containment. However, we had just received a pretty big rain, and the containment area was filled with water. So these areas need to be checked. If there's no sheen on the water and there's no pollutants in the water, then we need to get that pumped out so that when the next rain comes, it doesn't float the oil out of the containment area and onto the tarmac. Also need to identify control measures that need repair or replacement. Like I said earlier, keeping your dumpsters closed is a big deal. Sometimes it's difficult to open those dumpsters. Or to close the dumpsters once you've put a big load of material into the bin, but it's a lot more difficult to close the dumpster when there's no lid on it or if the lid is broken. So if you see stuff like this, go ahead and report it and get that dumpster lid fixed. And then check drainage pathways for evidence of pollutants. This is a little rill that was established by the trash compactor facility. This is just a small erosion area caused by stormwater that could potentially get pollutants into the stormwater management system. And finally, evaluate unidentified discharges of pollutants. Anytime you see a rainbow on the ground like this, chances are very good that there is a spill of oil upstream somewhere. Luckily for us, this photograph was not taken here at RSW or at FMY. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be as happy to be here. And part of the regular monitoring and inspections has to include the evaluation of the SWIP implementation itself. Is the SWIP being implemented by LCPA and tenant staff appropriately? And that's where the annual site compliance evaluation comes in. On a cold day in January, I rode along with Alicia and met with LCPA staff around the airport property to evaluate how well you guys are doing. And overall, RSW looked great. You're implementing the SWIP as necessary. We reviewed the effectiveness of the SWIP and completed a comprehensive inspection of the airport. The evaluation included an evaluation of control measures and a review of previous inspections. During those inspections, just like you guys, we have to have our forms that we fill out, and these forms are used to evaluate the control measures for effectiveness, and they are kept on site with the SWIP for a period of 3 years. The annual site compliance evaluation was emailed to the PPT, and it was made available to the tenant on the tenant website, so everybody here should have received a copy. We also use this opportunity to summarize necessary changes to the SWIP and to suggest corrective actions to anything seen during the evaluation. So similarly here, if you guys see something that needs to be changed in the SWIP, just provide that information to Alicia, and we'll have that updated so that when the inspectors come, we've got a nice up-to-date document. The evaluation is signed and kept with the SWIP for inspection purposes, and records are maintained for 6 years. Finally, we're going to move into the administrative provisions of the SWIP. Most of this stuff is done by the environmental compliance manager, but it is with input from you guys and consultants alike. Updates to the SWIP can and should occur throughout the year. Updates include any staffing changes that may affect the PPT and any new or discontinued activities that may affect the SWIP. If you see anything that could change the SWIP, including staffing changes, please let Alicia know, and please remember that the SWIP training and education information needs to be disseminated to all service staff. It's the manager's responsibility to ensure that everyone who needs annual training receives it. If there are questions about who needs to receive that training, please contact Alicia. And kind of on that note, please make sure that everybody signs the sign-in sheet. That's included into the SWIP and is part of our regulatory requirements. Everybody's favorite slide, right? Yay. All right. In conclusion, I've heard it said that the best offense is a good defense. But in our case, I think it's more appropriate to say that the best defense is a good offensive line. I like these guys. I was one of these guys way back in like the last millennium. The offensive line is the unsung first line of defense for the backfield. They play a critical role in every play of every game. They have to work well as a team to perform different tasks efficiently and effectively. And sometimes it's difficult to notice when the offensive line does their job really well, but it's painfully obvious to notice when they don't do their job well. The SWIP, the pollution prevention team, and everybody here today acts as a part of our offensive line. The unsung first line of defense keeping pollutants from entering our waterways. It isn't a job that can be done now and then or on a few plays of the game. It has to be done and done well every day. It has to be done by everyone associated with the SWIP, even if they have separate jobs, and we all rely on each other to communicate the different needs as they come up. And like the offensive line, there may not be a lot of excitement when things are running well, but it can get all too exciting when things go wrong. So personally, I thank you for taking the pollution prevention as a serious part of your everyday tasks. Thank you for lining up every day and doing your part, and thank you for working to ensure that we have a clean environment. What legislation led to the creation of the SWIP provisions? Was it the Clean Air Act, the Clean Uniform Act, Clean Water Act, or Clean Energy Act? Clean Water Act. Excellent. Second question, what do the waters of the U.S. include? Do they include ditches, waterways necessary for interstate commerce, wetlands, or small streams? All of them? Excellent. True or false, the SWIP is a permit issued by the FDEP?
True.
True. Who said true?
Same guy.
Outstanding. I appreciate you. I appreciate that, but the answer is actually false. The SWIP is the plan developed. The SWIP is the plan developed by LCPA to comply with the stormwater discharge permit. All right, generally stormwater flows from blank at the Southwest Florida International Airport. Is it east to west? Southwest to northeast?
Northeast.
Or how does it? Northeast to southwest?
Who said that last time?
And high to low. Yeah, water always flows high to low, right? The stormwater outfall is the location where stormwater enters LCPA property, leaves the property, evaporates, or is cleaned up with a spill kit. Everybody loves spill kits. Which one is this? Leaves the property? Excellent. All right, which of the following is not an allowable discharge? You're going to have to read this one. Is it equipment wash water that is collected and discharged to a sanitary sewer? Is it irrigation water? Is it pressure wash water with biodegradable soap additive or compressor condensate? Which one? Pressure wash. Why do you say that? Because it's got soap. Excellent. With that, I'm going to stop talking and open it up for questions, comments, and discussion. If you have anything that you've seen that you want to talk about, bring it up now, and hopefully someone in the room is intelligent enough to respond to your question. Thank you very much, guys.